The horse screamed once, a sound so sharp and desperate it cut through the desert air and lodged itself in the cowboy's chest. By the time he dropped to his knees beside the animal, he knew this was the moment that would decide whether he walked away with hope or buried the last thing keeping him alive. The stallion lay on its side, chest heaving, one powerful leg twisted at an angle that made seasoned men turn away. Sweat darkened its coat, and its eyes rolled white with pain. The cowboy, Ethan Cole, pressed his forehead briefly against the horse's neck, whispering words that no one else could hear. This animal had carried him through dust storms, gunfire, hunger, and grief. It was not just a horse. It was the reason he had survived the years after the war, the long silence after his family was gone. Men from the nearby trading posts stood back, muttering. One shook his head. Another spat into the dirt. "Best end it quick," someone said. "That leg's done." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't reach for his gun. He couldn't. Not yet. That was when he noticed her. She stood apart from the others, calm as the desert itself, her dark hair braided neatly down her back. She watched not with pity or fear, but with focused attention, as if the horse were already telling her its story. Her presence felt different, quiet, steady, unshaken by the tension hanging in the air. She stepped forward. "I can heal your horse," she said. The men laughed. Not cruelly but dismissively. They had heard such promises before, from drifters and miracle sellers who vanished when hope ran dry. Ethan looked up at her. "You sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She met his eyes without hesitation. "Yes." "Then why haven't you already?" someone sneered. She ignored them and looked only at Ethan. "Because healing is never free," she said. "And because I have one condition." The desert seemed to go still. Ethan stood slowly, dust clinging to his knees. "Name it." She hesitated, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to ask. "If I heal him," she said, "you will stay. You will listen. And you will help my people when the time comes." The words landed heavier than any demand for gold. Ethan's breath caught. Stay. Help her people. He knew who she was now, not by her clothes, but by the way the others shifted uneasily at her words. "You're Apache," he said quietly. "Yes." A murmur rippled through the men. "Careful, Cole," someone warned. "That's a road that don't end well." Ethan looked back at the horse. The stallion groaned softly, as if sensing the decision being made over its life. "What kind of help?" Ethan asked. She didn't flinch. "Fairness. Protection. A voice when ours is ignored." Silence stretched. Ethan had spent years running, from memories, from responsibility, from anything that tied him to a future. He had told himself survival was enough. But kneeling there beside a dying animal, facing a woman who asked not for money but for conscience, he realized how hollow that belief had been. "If I say yes," he said slowly, "and I fail you, then your horse will still live," she replied. "Healing is not undone by broken promises. Only trust is." He nodded once. "Do it." The men stepped back as she knelt beside the stallion. Her hands moved with certainty, gentle but precise. She spoke softly, not in English, not in words meant for the crowd. She examined the leg, felt the heat, the swelling, the tension beneath the skin. She asked for water, for clean cloth, for quiet. Ethan obeyed every instruction without question. She worked for hours beneath the relentless sun, setting the leg, binding it with herbs and fabric, murmuring steady reassurances. At one point, the horse thrashed, and Ethan threw himself against its shoulder to keep it from injuring itself further. "Hold him," she said calmly. "He trusts you." Those words struck deeper than she could have known. By dusk, the horse lay still, not dead but resting. Its breathing slowed. Its eyes closed. She stood, wiping her hands. "He will live," she said. "But healing takes time. So does trust." Ethan swallowed hard. "Thank you." She studied him for a long moment. "I am called Naya," she said. "You are Ethan Cole." He blinked. "How do you?" "Because you are not as invisible as you think," she replied. They traveled together after that, not as companions at first, but as obligations bound by necessity. Ethan followed her to her people's camp, uneasy but determined to honor his word. He expected hostility. He expected suspicion. What he found instead was watchful restraint. Children stared at him from behind their mothers' skirts. Elders observed him with unreadable eyes. No one welcomed him, but no one drove him away either. Naya showed him where to keep the horse, how to tend the leg, how to read the animal's pain without forcing it. Each lesson carried more than skill. It carried patience, humility, respect. In return, Ethan repaired fences, helped hunt, stood guard when tensions with nearby settlers flared. He listened when leaders spoke of broken treaties, stolen land, promises made and erased like footprints in sand. At night, he lay awake beneath unfamiliar stars, realizing how little he had understood of the world he rode through so carelessly. Weeks passed. The horse stood again, then walked, then trotted, slower than before but alive. The day the stallion carried weight once more, Ethan laughed aloud for the first time in years. Naya watched from a distance, her expression soft but unreadable. "You kept your word," she said later. "So did you," he replied. Trouble came as it always did, wearing the face of fear and the sound of rifles. A group of armed men rode toward the camp one morning, intent on forcing relocation, claiming orders backed by distant authorities. Voices rose. Children were pulled inside shelters. Hands hovered near weapons. Ethan stepped forward. He stood between the rifles and the camp. "She asked me to help," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "And I will." The men hesitated. They knew him, knew his name, knew his reputation. "You'll side with them?" one demanded. "I'll side with what's right," Ethan replied. For once, words were exchanged, threats made, but violence did not come, not that day. When the riders finally left, the camp exhaled as one. That night, Naya sat beside Ethan as the fire crackled. "This is what I meant," she said softly. "By the condition." He nodded. "I know. You could still leave." He looked at the fire, then at the people moving beyond its glow. "I spent years running from what mattered," he said. "I'm tired of surviving. I want to stand for something." She smiled then, not wide, not triumphant, but real. The horse stamped the earth nearby, strong and steady. And in the quiet desert night, under stars that watched without judgment, a cowboy realized that healing was never just about bones and blood, but about the courage to stay, to listen, and to change when the world asked more of you than you expected to give. The desert changed him slowly, the way wind shapes stone, patient, relentless, honest. After the armed men rode away, no one celebrated. Relief settled over the camp like a cautious breath held too long, released but not forgotten. Ethan understood then that danger did not always announce itself with gunfire. Sometimes it returned in papers, in soldiers, in laws written far from the dust and heat where consequences lived. Naya knew this too. He could see it in the way she watched the horizon even when the camp seemed calm, in how she taught the children to pack light, to listen, to move quietly. He stayed. At first, he told himself it was only until the horse was strong enough for the long ride back east. Then it became until the season changed. Then until the next threat passed. And somewhere along the way, he stopped counting reasons altogether. Life in the camp demanded more from him than his old wandering ever had. He learned to rise with the sun not because he had nowhere else to be, but because others depended on him. He learned when to speak and, more importantly, when to listen. When elders spoke, he listened. When Naya corrected him, he listened. When the land itself warned through signs he was only beginning to understand, he listened harder than ever. Naya did not hover near him, nor did she push him away. She treated him as one might treat a river, useful, dangerous if misunderstood, worthy of respect. They spoke often, sometimes of practical things, sometimes of stories. She told him of her grandmother, who had healed wounds with herbs and grief with silence. He told her of the war, of nights filled with shouting and smoke, of the emptiness that followed him home. "You carry many ghosts," she said once, not accusing, just observing. "So do you," he replied. "Yes," she agreed. "But I do not run from them." That truth stung, because it was spoken gently. The horse healed well, better than anyone expected. Its stride was slower, its power tempered, but its spirit remained. Children began calling it Second Wind. Ethan found the name fitting. Each morning when he brushed the stallion, he felt as if he were tending something inside himself too, something broken that had not been lost after all. Trouble returned in a quieter form weeks later. A government agent arrived with papers and a polite smile that did not reach his eyes. He spoke of boundaries and permits, of progress and inevitability. He spoke as if lives could be shifted like lines on a map. Ethan stood beside Naya as the man spoke, translating when needed, clarifying when words grew slippery. "This land has been promised before," the agent said. "Circumstances change. So do people," Ethan replied. "But that doesn't make promises disappear." The agent frowned. "You're a long way from your own kind, Mr. Cole." Ethan didn't look away. "I found my kind right here." That night, the camp gathered in council. Voices rose, not in anger but in urgency. Some argued for moving now before force arrived. Others insisted on staying, on standing ground that had already been surrendered too many times. Naya listened to every word. Then she spoke. "We have lived by running," she said. "We have lived by fighting. Neither has kept us safe for long. This time, we will live by being seen." All eyes turned to Ethan, not because he was a leader, but because he was proof. Proof that bridges could exist where only walls had stood before. They decided to send word. To speak, not just to authorities, but to nearby towns. To farmers. To traders. To anyone who would listen. They would not hide. They would not attack. They would stand in daylight and speak truth. It was dangerous. It was unprecedented. Ethan volunteered to ride. He visited towns where he had once passed through unnoticed. He spoke in saloons where laughter died when he mentioned the camp. He spoke to preachers, merchants, men who had never questioned why land changed hands without blood, but never without loss. Some turned him away. Some threatened him. But a few listened. Enough listened. When soldiers returned weeks later, they did not come alone. They came watched, by townspeople, by reporters, by men who had begun to understand that progress did not have to mean erasure. Tension hung thick as heat lightning. The standoff lasted 2 days. On the third, orders changed. The camp was not removed. Not that season. Not that year. It was not victory. But it was space. Time. Breath. That night, fires burned brighter. Songs rose low, steady, resilient. Children danced. Elders smiled without caution for the first time in many moons. Ethan sat apart, overwhelmed by a feeling he barely recognized. Purpose. Naya joined him, offering a cup of warm broth. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. "You kept your promise," she said. "So did you," he replied. She studied him, the firelight catching in her eyes. "You could still leave," she reminded him. "I know," he said. "But I don't want to." Silence stretched between them, full but unafraid. In the months that followed, Ethan became a fixture, no longer a guest, not fully one of them either, but something new. A bridge, as Naya had once said. He taught some of the younger men how to read maps, how to negotiate contracts, how to speak without yielding ground. They taught him the language of the land, the names of stars he had never known, the meaning of patience beyond endurance. One morning, as the sun broke over the horizon, Naya found him saddling second wind. "You're not running," she said, half smiling. "No," he said. "Just riding." She nodded. "Good." He paused, then added, "When I first met you, I thought the condition was about my help." She raised an eyebrow. "I was wrong," he continued. "It was about my staying." Her smile deepened, quiet and knowing. Healing often asks more than we expect. He mounted the horse, feeling the strength beneath him, steady and sure. As he rode out across the open land, not away but outward, Ethan understood something at last. The Apache woman had healed his horse. But by asking him to stay, to listen, to stand, she had healed something far more stubborn. And for the first time since the world had taught him how to run, the cowboy rode forward not in escape, but in belonging.